Good evening, Fentress Driskell, Democratic leader of the Florida House of Representatives. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's edition of the Driskell Debrief. I'm so delighted to share our space every week. My goodness, what a week it's been. Like it's hard to even keep track of how much that's happened in the past week because there's been so much going on. And I mean, let's just get into it. Um, I want to start actually though with a bit of gratitude for my legislative staff. Guys, we know it's staffers, it's the folks behind the scenes who make the world go round. And so big shout out to my staff for how they help us have a multiplier effect. Because sometimes I'm at an event and my staffers are at events so that Team Fentress is in two places at once. So just really want to give a nice shout out to Zach on my legislative staff, and also want to let you know what we've been up to on that front. So a few things to highlight. The first is that the Amelie Arena gave a special tour that was just for legislative staffers. I think that's super cool because honestly, like I said, staffers do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. They don't get a lot of glory. They work so hard. So I kind of love it that the Amelie Arena low key said, legislators stay home. This one's just for staff. And from what I understand, it was an amazing tour. And then the second thing was that Feeding Tampa Bay just opened a new facility. And if you're not familiar with Feeding Tampa Bay, I encourage you to get acquainted with this amazing local nonprofit. I first came into contact with them during the pandemic. And as we all know, there were a lot of folks in our community facing need at around that time. And so I was able to volunteer with them. We still didn't know a lot about the virus, the coronavirus that was going around, but we knew that people needed food and there was a lot of hunger. People had a lot of job insecurity at that time. And Feeding Tampa Bay did a fantastic, just phenomenal job taking care of folks in our community. And I was able to help get folks to donate food for them and to also participate in some food drives and like actually food distributions. I mean, so it was really cool. So Team Fentress was just able to tour the new Feeding Tampa Bay facility. It's amazing. Again, this is a phenomenal local nonprofit. And so that was a great thing to do in the past week. Also, last week on the legislative side, we held field hearings around the state. So let me tell you what that means. I talk a lot about my role as leader and how I wear the different hats. On the legislative side, that all relates to policy. What's our policy platform going to be? What bills are we going to put forward or fight against? And I'll tell you one thing that our caucus has seen, my caucus and I, is that our opposition, they control the committee hearings, they control those agendas, and oftentimes they will pack an agenda. Like if they know there's a controversial bill coming up, they'll pack the agenda so much that people who come to testify can't even have the time that they thought they were going to get to talk about how that bill will impact their lives. You know how I always encourage you all to share your stories? Well, in the Florida legislature, it's like the exact opposite. They don't want to hear from the people. And so we as a Democratic caucus decided to have field hearings around the state. So we held one in Tampa, one in Orlando, and one in the Fort Lauderdale area. And it was simply to open the doors and to have legislators there in our caucus to hear from the people. We invited people to come and share their stories. And boy, did they. I learned so much. People talked to about the struggles that they have with access to healthcare. We heard from the disabilities community about improvements in the law that could be made to make their lives easier. We heard from folks, about criminal justice reform. We heard about, of course, property insurance rates and housing affordability. We know that that is out of control. So many different topics were covered, environmental issues. There were ideas for bills that came up. Folks want greater accountability in their public schools and not public schools, excuse me, with what's happening with school funding towards these voucher programs. And they want greater investment in our public schools. We talked about public safety. We talked about so many different topics. And at the end of the night, I would ask the folks who came, I'd say, how many of you learned something new tonight? And everyone would raise their hand because even though they came to talk about their particular issue, they learned something by listening to their neighbors and other folks who had come and hearing their stories. And I just want to uplift that. I think this supports our continued theory of the case that regardless of whether you're a Floridian by birth or by choice, regardless of if you live in the Panhandle or all the way down in the Florida Keys, we have more in common than not. And these property insurance rates, these bad bills that are getting passed, don't care if we're Republican, Democrat, or independent. They're coming for us all. And so we have to find a way to build out new coalitions to build the sort of future for Florida that we want to see. And I fundamentally believe that we can do that through voting and making sure that we are electing representatives who reflect our values. But the field hearings were great. It was a first for our caucus. I was honored to travel, like I said, to all three of them and to preside over them. Big shout outs to my legislative staff, to the House Democratic Office staff, to the staffs of Representative Anna V. Eskamani and Representative Christine Hunchovsky, who also worked so hard to help pull these off. And Rep. Eskamani and also Rep. Diane Hart and Representative Christine Hunchovsky served as my vice chairs for these field hearings and helped to preside over them and to hear feedback from the people. It was great. We learned a lot, and I want to do these going forward. In fact, I think that we might try to do one in Tallahassee during committee weeks once the legislature reconvenes in the fall. So we make sure, again, that we're hearing from the people and we're using your feedback and your stories to help drive our legislative agenda. So for anyone who came out, thank you so much. It was an amazing event. So we've been busy on the legislative side, but let's get into it on these politics, child. There's a lot to talk about. So I don't know if you've been following this, but in Iowa, there was a 6-week abortion ban that just went into effect this week. I think it might have been yesterday that it went into effect because it's only Tuesday, right? It's hard to remember what day it is, but it is very similar to Florida's 6-week abortion ban. And so that is very problematic for a number of reasons, not least of which is that most people don't even know they're pregnant at 6 weeks. So we see that it's further overreach by the government into the people's ability to make the most intimate decisions of heart and home. This is in Iowa, they actually do have exceptions for rape, incest, and fetal abortion or fetal abnormalities when a mother's life is in danger. I don't know if you remember, though, in Florida, before we had the 6-week ban, we had a 15-week ban that did not provide those types of exceptions. About 60% of Iowans support the abortion being legal, making this another case of an extremist bloc of legislators not listening to the wishes of their constituents. Where have we heard that before? And I think if you've been watching or tuning in, you know that Amendment 4 is on the ballot this November in Florida. Amendment 4 would protect a woman's right to access an abortion in our state's constitution. Why does that matter? And I know people say, gosh, a constitution, why can't it just be a law? Here's the thing. Let me give you the real deal. When the United States Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, it basically said, we're going to let decisions about whether or not abortion access is legal and about how, what it looks like, what are the contours and the rules and what's allowed. We're going to leave that up to state legislatures. We're going to leave that up to state governments. In Florida, we have a legislature that is out of balance. In fact, Republicans are in what's called a supermajority, meaning they have more than 2/3 of the votes, and Democrats are in a superminority, meaning that we have a little less than 1/3. The legislature is not reflective of the people of the state, who we know are roughly 1/3 Republican, Democrat, and NPAs. We also know that Floridians overwhelmingly value freedom, but we have a legislature that refuses to listen to the voice of the people. And so, unfortunately, a legislative fix is not possible right now. But the other way that we can make law in the state of Florida is through ballot initiatives that amend the Constitution. So that is why we see this ballot initiative, and we don't see it coming as a law from the state legislature. The ballot initiatives are what allow for basically direct democracy and for citizens to have a vote or a voice in what they want to see made into law. We know that there were well over 1 million Floridians who signed a petition to get this on the ballot. They were Republicans, Democrats, and independents alike. And this fall, Floridians will have their opportunity to have their voices heard on this issue in the form of a ballot initiative, because frankly, we can't trust the legislature to do its job and to have legislation that actually listens to the people. So at bottom, what this really is about is whether or not you believe in privacy in healthcare and whether you believe in limiting government interference in our personal medical decisions. So if you are passionate about that, please make sure that you are prepared to vote on Amendment 4 this fall. And I encourage you to vote yes so that those decisions can be left up to people. They're very personal decisions. And I don't think Tallahassee politicians have any business looking over your shoulder in the exam room as you try to figure out what's best for you and your family and your life. Of course, the other big news is that Vice President Kamala Harris is now at the top of the ticket in this presidential election for Democrats. This is huge. The enthusiasm's been amazing for me as a Black woman leader, as the first Black woman leader in many different roles, whether it was when I was student government president at Harvard, or whether it's now as I'm leading the Democratic caucus in the House, and we've never had a Black woman leader. I find so much inspiration from Vice President Harris's example and just the way that she is meeting this moment with grace and with strength, I think should be an example to us all. Of course, we thank President Biden for his service and everything that he's been able to do to carry us through some very tumultuous times as a country. But America is showing that it is ready for our first women president. And that is just amazing and something I feel so grateful to be witnessing in my lifetime. Last night, I was a featured speaker on the Women for Harris call. There was a Women for Harris organizing call, national call, and it broke the record for the largest Zoom call ever with over 300,000 attendees. We raised $1.7 million for the Harris presidential campaign, and we got 50,000 new volunteer sign-ups. Let's go. The energy was phenomenal, and it continues to be. Now, you may know that we're a little less than 100 days out from the election on November 5th. That may sound like a long time, but I promise you it's going to go by super fast. But I just wanted to uplift some of what we've been seeing in terms of the energy. We had a huge phone bank in Hillsborough County that maxed out our Democratic Party office, where 85% of the attendees were first-time volunteers. That is new energy. That is a fresh wind. It's all because of the VP. That's huge. There also was a golf cart rally in the Villages up in Sumter County. And if you don't know about the Villages, let me tell you, it tends to be a very red area, very conservative. We've got a lot of retired folks up there who are just, it's just one of those little enclaves of red. But the Democrats in the Villages are well organized, and those folks have energy. In fact, I was honored to be their keynote speaker at their Democratic Party gala earlier this year. And I was invited to be a guest at the golf cart rally, but had already committed to another event for the campaign and could not attend. But big shout out to Representative Anavi Escamani, who was able to step in and pinch hit. There were over 500 golf carts, y'all, in this rally. It's so funny. I talked to a national reporter today who caught wind of the rally, and she was like, "Are y'all punking us down there? The Villages, like there are Democrats in the Villages?" And I was like, "Yeah, girl, there are Democrats in the Villages, and they are on fire." So please also note that nearly 10,000 new volunteers signed up statewide. This is precisely the energy that we need. And it's not just for the top of the ticket, because yes, we need to elect Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States. We also need to keep in mind that we have down ballot races. And these races are critical if you care about issues like public education funding or the environment or investing in affordable housing. All of that is state issues. If you care about the curriculum that your kids learn in school, or whether they can be taught accurate history, or expanding access to healthcare so that costs come down for us all of those decisions are made at the state level. And then, of course, we know that there are amazing elected officials at the local level who impact us even further with issues about, transportation. They have to make decisions about that and community planning, and then at the school board level. So the point that I want to make is that it's not just less than 100 days for the top of the ticket in that election. It's less than 100 days for all of us. And we need to always remember what's at stake. And we need to remember that there are candidates down ballot who are ready to put people over profit and constituents before culture wars. These are the people who will legislate on those issues that I just talked about, everything from housing to abortion access. And in that way, I wanted to explain a little more about my role as leader. We talked a little bit about my role on the legislative side and some of the work that we've been doing there, which has been great. And we continue to maintain an active legislative office even during campaign season. But I also wear a political hat. Actually, I wear two. I have my own reelection campaign. I'm working to win my final race for state representative before I term out in 2026. And of course, I would appreciate your vote and your support with that. But my duties extend statewide. And as leader of the Florida House Democratic Campaign Committee, it's my job to lead the team who raises the resources. We talking dollar bills, y'all, who raises the resources and leads and direct the strategy to win those seats that are right on the margins. What am I talking about? If I were to show you the map that Republicans drew in 2022 during redistricting, you will see where they played with our seats. There are some seats that should be Democratic seats. They should have Democratic representatives in there right now, but for the gerrymandering that the Republicans did. So we are trying to go back and unseat those Republican incumbents so we can win back some of those seats. When I first entered the legislature in 2018, Democrats were 47 strong in the House and growing. We've since suffered a few hits that have brought us back and down to 36, but we're going to bring that right back up. We need to win 5 seats in order to break the Republican supermajority this fall. 5 seats, and we can do this. And as leader, what I want you to know is that I have a competent plan to do this, and we have the right team behind us to go out and do this. If I were to show you that map, that redistricting map, you'll see that they mostly played with seats in the Central Florida area and South Florida. Central Florida is an area that's been growing for Democrats. It's been getting better for Democrats. Republicans don't like that. We know that South Florida typically has been a Democratic stronghold. Republicans also don't like that. And so they drew those seats in order for Republicans to have them. But we have a plan. So there are a number of seats that we're keeping an eye on. I'm going to tell you about some of them tonight, and I'll tell you a little bit about the plan for how we intend to win these seats. If you have questions, I want you to reach out. We're happy to answer them. But we want you to know and understand that help is on the way. So in Central Florida, we're keeping an eye on seats like House District 38. That's Sarah Henry is the Democrat who's running there. Sarah is a phenomenal young woman. She works in the nonprofit sector. She ran for the Florida House last cycle and came very close to unseating a Republican incumbent. And I believe that she'll do it this time. She's working hard and doing all the things. She and her team knock the doors. They're out in the community. They're raising the resources. And Sarah's opponent actually voted in favor of the 6-week abortion ban. And for all of you out there who believe in that personal freedom to make medical decisions on our own without governmental interference, we need to vote for Sarah. We need to elect Sarah to the Florida House because she is the one who will help protect abortion access in that district. It is essential. I'm watching races like over in House District 45, where we have Leonard Spencer running. Leonard Spencer comes to this race with experience as a business executive, and he also has really strong democratic principles. He's running against a Republican incumbent who has been besieged with scandal and allegations of misappropriation of state funds. Leonard is working hard to represent the Central Florida community, and he reflects its values. We're watching Leonard. We believe that he can win that seat. Here's another that we're watching down in South Florida. We've got Joe Saunders, who's running in Florida House District 106. Joe Saunders is an incredible, just human being. He's a member of the LGBTQ community. He works for Equality Florida in legislative affairs. He would be representative of that community and be supportive of that community because they're currently represented by a representative who unfortunately has taken votes against the LGBTQ community every time. This is a seat that the Republicans won by only 242 votes in 2022. 242 votes. That's nothing. We can win that. We can do that. We can have higher turnout Democrats. Let's go in House District 106. So this is a seat that I fully believe that we can take back this election cycle. We're watching seats in Osceola County in House District 47. We're watching seats all over. And by the way, I have four incumbents that we need to protect. Up in the Panhandle, that's Representative Allison Tant, who's one of the hardest working people that I know, legislator or not. Right here in Tampa Bay, we've got Lindsay Cross. She's over in St. Pete. She's an environmental scientist. She's super smart and she's our expert on environmental issues. We need to protect Representative Lindsay Cross. Over in the Orlando area, some of you might remember the name Representative Tom Keene. We worked so hard to flip his seat from red to blue in a special election earlier this year in January, and now we need to make sure that he is reelected. Then we also have Representative Catherine Waldron down in the Palm Beach area. Catherine is a phenomenal representative who also works so very hard. She's an expert on real estate issues and housing issues, and we need to bring her back to the Florida House. Oh, and forgive me, there was a candidate that I failed to mention in House District 91. We've got Jay Schuster. Jay is a young lawyer who's working very hard in his race. It's amazing how when you put your mind to something, what you can accomplish, and he is laser focused on winning. And as leader, I love that. So we have amazing candidates all across the state who are working so hard. And these are the seats, some of the seats that we have our eyes on to either protect or to flip so that we can win. So how do we do that? Well, we need your help and we need your support. In the Tom Keene race, part of what we did was register new voters, okay? And we made sure that people had their vote by mail ballot. That is essential. Vote by mail is a safe and effective way to vote. And a lot of folks don't know that because of a bad law that DeSantis signed into law in 2022, everybody's been kicked off the vote by mail rolls. So there are a lot of folks, particularly our seniors, who count on that as a way to vote, who are not receiving their ballots and they have no idea why. It's because of that bad law. This is why at the end of every live stream, I know you probably get tired of me saying it sometimes, and you might as well go ahead and get tired of it tonight because I'm going to say it again, which is that we have to make sure that we're registered to vote and that our friends and family are registered to vote and that they have requested their vote by mail ballot. It is essential because there are people in that election, there were folks who were expecting to receive their ballot and who would have never received it had we not called them and asked them if they wanted to re-enroll and vote by mail. It is absolutely essential. In that district, Democrats were at like a -3 disadvantage for vote by mail registration. We weren't doing so great. We were losing. In a matter of months, by knocking doors and having a paid program where we talk to people about registering for a Democrat or voting for a Democrat, supporting a Democrat, like talking to them in a very, in a way where we weren't shy. We were very proud to be Democrats. We took that district to roughly a +11 for Democrats. So that's a 14-point swing. That was intentional. That was strategic. That was with purpose to get in there and make sure that people had their vote by mail ballots so that we could turn things around in that seat. And so I don't believe it was an accident that we won that special election. It was having hard work. It was an amazing candidate in Tom Keene, who was a naval veteran. He was a commander in the United States Navy, and we thank him for his service. We had a lot of volunteer energy around the state. Probably some of you who are on this call helped to volunteer and come knock some doors or send some texts or send postcards, whatever you did. If you sent money to Tom, we appreciate it because every little bit helped. And that is how we were able to win that seat. Now we must go and employ those same smart strategies in each of these seats that we need to flip, in each of these strategic areas of the state where we need to flip a seat. We have to go out and talk to voters. It's essential. We have to talk to them about being Democrats, and we have to talk to them about the issues that matter most to them. That was essential in the special election, that we used data-driven messaging. You hear me talk a lot about freedom. I tell you that the House Democrats believe that every Floridian deserves the freedom to be healthy, prosperous, and safe. We've been using that messaging now for over 2 years. Why? Because freedom is a quintessential American value. And in Florida, we especially value our freedom. We have data tested and poll tested this message, and we know that it beats DeSantis's false freedom narrative. You know how he says we live in the freest state in the country? Child, please. That narrative is false because that's a governor who's been pushing government overreach since the time he took office. People want real freedom. They want to be free from culture wars, and they want to be free to live a good life. So we talk about that value of freedom. That's what we did in the special election. People wanted to talk about property insurance rates. And so we did. We didn't hide from that. We know that they're high, and we know that the Republicans in the legislature aren't doing enough to fix it. And it's time to have some solutions that aren't partisan based. We just need the best and the freshest ideas that are going to help the people. It doesn't matter where they come from, Republican, Democrat, or independent. And people wanted to talk about abortion access. That is top of mind for Floridians, because I'm telling you that abortion ban that is in effect right now is hurting women's lives. It's hurting women's lives. And it breaks my heart to say this, but there are women who will probably suffer medical tragedies because there will be doctors who are afraid to perform an abortion because of what the law now says. And so people wanted to talk about that in that special election, and that's what we talked about. And similarly, in these elections where we have to flip seats, we're going to talk about the issues that the people want to talk about. So this is part just giving you, just a little bit of a glimpse into the strategy that we have to use. It also breaks my heart to tell you that these House races are very expensive. My goodness, if I told you how much a competitive House race costs, you probably wouldn't even believe me. But just know that when you get those texts from Democrats and those emails asking you to contribute, oftentimes it's real. Like, people really need the resources. I need you to support these candidates that I've been uplifting and support my efforts as leader to go out and flip these seats, because it is essential. But with a smart strategy, with a competent plan, with data tested messaging, and bringing in the right volunteer energy, that's the mix. And I know that we can flip those seats. And why does it matter to break the Republican supermajority? Why do I talk about that so much? It's because when the Republicans have 2/3, or when they have less than 2/3, there are certain procedural votes where they need to come and negotiate with the minority party, because without us, they wouldn't have the votes to push it through. It allows us to have that give and take in government. And it helps us to when we're not in a supermajority, it helps us to better protect the people, because we can stop some of the bad stuff from happening. Right now, they have more than 2/3 votes, so they don't really need us for those procedural votes. And it shows. It shows in the extremism and the bad legislation that's been coming out of Tallahassee. And so breaking the Republican supermajority matters. It matters to all of us across the state, not just to the ones in Central Florida and South Florida. This would have sweeping implications for the entire state. And then it also gives Democrats a platform on which to build and continue to win seats year after year. The goal is to win as many seats as possible before the next redistricting cycle, so we can have fairer maps that are drawn that give Floridians a fighting chance to actually have a legislature that is reflective of the people. It's essential. It's why I work so hard. It's why my members work so hard. It's why our staffers and our team work so hard. The future of Florida, I believe, for Florida's future success, and for us to build a Florida that is more inclusive of all people, and then invest in public education and all the issues that we care about, we have to have a legislature that is more balanced. That's where it starts, and that's where it ends, full stop. And so I'm counting on each and every one of you to answer these calls when we issue these calls to action. We literally cannot do it without you. And even if we could do it without you, I wouldn't want to, because it'd be a lot less fun. So we need you to win this thing. We need you. Now, let me just say a few things about the joy of young people, because I've really been enjoying this. Having Vice President Harris at the top of the ticket has inspired so much momentum. And I think we owe a lot of gratitude to our young people who've been doing these amazing reels, and the little songs like "Did You Just Fall Out of a Coconut Tree?" And then we have the whole brat phenomenon, which has been so amazing to learn about. Young people, you inspire me, and I thank you for working so hard to build the momentum that we're seeing for this election year. Now, this is what you can do when you're not even trying that hard. Y'all weren't even trying for this. So think about what you can do next. You are literally shaping the conversation and shaping history right now. My message is to you, I want you to feel empowered. I want you to witness how you're changing the world, even at this moment. And I want you to know that your voice matters. And in fact, the world is watching you and the world is listening. Show up and make sure that your voice is heard. And the way to do that is to vote this November. Show up. Yes, you're making a splash on social media. This is great. The world is poised to listen because of how you have taken the reins over this past week. And it's been amazing to see. You are my campaign manager, Kat, likes to say, young people are accidentally completely proficient at this new concept of relational organizing. And what we mean by that is because relational organizing is just leveraging the power of your own network. You do this already through your social media posts. You do this already through your group chats. Young people, you are poised to take over this world. The world is your oyster. Make sure that you are registered to vote. Make sure that your friends are registered to vote, and make sure that they show up at the polls this November. And I have no doubt that if you do that, we will be so successful. I believe Vice President Harris can win, and I believe that you will be part of the success story in Florida as we flip these House seats and as we take Amendment 4 across the finish line. So, again, make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure you're enrolled in Vote by Mail. Make sure your friends and family are too. The voter registration affiliation deadline for the August primaries just passed. So if you weren't registered to vote already and you wanted to vote in the primaries next month, unfortunately, the deadline has passed. However, you can still request your vote by mail ballot if you would like to vote that way. You just need to do so by August 8th. If you are here in Hillsborough County, which is in the Tampa Bay area, know that my office is holding phone banks twice a week to try to help get folks informed about the primary and to get voters in our district registered with their vote by mail ballot. So please join us. You can, if you are in Florida, the website to go and get registered to vote, by the way, is registertodvoteflorida.gov. That's registertodvoteflorida.gov. If you are out of state, you can also go to vote.gov to register to vote and to get your ballot and to do all of those things. I believe, what do I believe? What do I really feel in my heart? I believe that we are living in a consequential time in American history. And I think even before the shape up at the top of the ticket, folks would have told you that this is the most important election of our lifetime. Nothing about that has changed because the challenge that we're facing on the other side of this thing is the same. We have a simple choice. It's progress or regression. Do we want to move forward or do we want to roll with the 2025 plan that takes us back? Do we want a leader in Vice President Kamala Harris who shows that America can continue to move forward and try to attain and be that more perfect union that we all know that we could be? Or do we want to go back to that same old tired playbook? Do we want to go back to chaos? Remember what it was like living from 2016 to 2020. It was stressful, y'all. It was stressful. I can remember rolling over in my bed every day, checking my phone and thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to wake up to see that that man had gotten us in, had gotten us into now? I want to see America meet this moment in its history. And I know that we can do it. I know and believe in my heart we can elect the first woman president of the United States. What an amazing time to be alive. And wouldn't it be awesome to be a part of it? So we have to all make sure that we do our part by voting, by volunteering, by giving resources if you can. It is essential. And I do believe that this is a rising tide that will help lift all I was going to say all boats, but I said all votes. And I kind of like that better because we need folks to vote down ballot as well and make sure that the representatives that we're putting in at state and local government truly are reflective of our values. So thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I just love this space. Shout out to my folks in Lakeland and in Polk County who I got to see today over at a small event that we had there. And it was wonderful to fellowship and hear from you all about some of the issues taking place in your community and to share with you about the ways that the Florida House Democrats are trying to listen to the people and make sure that we are taking your stories into account as we go about making policy. And that reminds me, remember that you're always welcome to share your story with us. You can send it in to yourvoice@finterestforflorida.com. That's yourvoice@finterestforflorida.com. We love to hear from you. We love to hear your stories. It empowers us. It keeps me motivated. It keeps me just my energy going. It's why I work so hard, is so that we can all enjoy this Florida, all feel united in this Florida and feel included and move towards a better future. So thank you so much. I can't wait to see you next week. Everybody take care.